There's a thing that happens in that town, in that area, where the people that think outside of the norm say it in like whispered, hushed tones. There's a certain ideology that's attached to that city, and it's not logical. It's a kooky, wacky, completely insulated left-wing view of the world, and they enforce it with an iron fist. And if you're not on that team, you don't get booked for things. You don't get picked for things. If you're someone who has conservative leanings, or you talk about, there's projects you're never going to get. You're never going to be involved with. People will, they'll malign you and without knowing you at all, be openly prejudiced about you. And so no one does it. So everyone who goes over there who's just like desperately trying to make it, they're desperately trying to get in movies, they're desperately trying to get a recording deal, whatever it is they're desperately trying to do. The last thing they want to do is do something and talk about something that's going to politically get them at odds with the people that run the studios. So no one does. Everybody just follows the same sort of wacky ideology that these people take from the universities. They go straight into working as a PA and straight into working for executives and producers, and all of those people are indoctrinated. They're all in this wild-ass cult of weirdness. And then you have people that move there to try to make it. And these people are just always going on auditions. So they're always like, please choose me, please choose me. And no, they didn't choose me. And so you're trying to be friends with the people who choose people. You're trying to get them into parties, trying to introduce them to other people. You're trying to be around other famous people.
Getting anxiety.
So this person's been chosen. I got to be around the chosen person. We're going to go to the chosen person's party. Maybe we can get chosen. And so you get this like overwhelming anxiety that fills the fucking city.
Yeah.
And then now you have TikTokers and influencers and all these people that are just trying to do anything to get famous.
Yeah.
And that the reality stars and all that started it all off, and the fucking Real Housewives and all that wacky shit. You get away from that. You're like, oh, there's real people out there. There's real people. That's a storm of anxiety. And just a hurricane of confusion and Zoloft and wah! And everyone's losing their mind, and everyone's in therapy, and everyone's fucking nuts, and everyone's trans. It's out of touch.
Yeah.
It's just a crazed cult.
Yeah, it's like, you start out as a stand-up comedian and you are trying to, poke holes in the absurdity of the world, and you're saying things that are not being said on stage. And then, as, you all of a sudden get brought into, and I'm sort of saying the every stand-up comedian, every outlier, every person that's doing something different, a punk rocker, a skateboarder. My goofy show was so out there when I was making it. And I was making it, I was rebelling against, in Canada, in my little public access show. I was kind of trying to rebel against what obviously seems like a formulaic, mainstream way of thinking to create art, right? And then you move to Los Angeles because, the show got on MTV. I ended up moving to Los Angeles. Now I'm talking about myself now.
Trans.
All of a sudden being asked to go on, the show, the Tonight Show, Saturday Night Live, and you're on these shows. And, I was sort of a bit of a naive, moron, basically, like in purposefully so. I would go on these shows, try to go nuts, right, and try to do something crazy and just try to sort of almost disrupt the whole format of it, right, in those first couple of years as a naive person who didn't understand how Hollywood worked. And I was just, I went on, I had a similar thing to our last appearance here on Jay Leno. I went on Jay Leno when I had a film coming out. I went on Jay Leno and I came up with this bit. Let me roll the bar. They had remember they had the bar cart, the J bar. I'll roll it out on stage during the show, and then I'll do a shot of Jaeger with Jay. Jay doesn't. This is a crazy story. I probably told you this before, but I do a shot of Jaeger with Jay, and Jay doesn't drink. So he said, okay, well, I'll throw it over my shoulder, right? So we go there, and I'm with my buddy who's, as a buddy who, like, pushes you further into the darkness, right? Like, you got a bad idea, and he pushes you further and makes it even worse.
Use the force.
Yeah. So we're in the green room getting ready. I'm in the green room with my buddy getting ready to go on the show, and he goes, do a shot now before you go on. I'm like, oh, okay, so I do a shot now before I go on, right? And get ready to go on. The bit's all approved with the Tonight Show, It's a gag. They know I'm doing real Jaeger, right? But it wasn't planned that I would do a shot before I go on. He goes, do another shot before you go on.
2 shots.
2 shots. Do another one. So now I walk out, I'm 3 shots in before the show even starts.
Oh, boy. You're hammered.
Well,
Pretty quickly.
And then I got out there and I did a shot, and the audience goes crazy and cheers, right? And so then I do another shot, and so I end up doing way too many shots, and it kind of ended up very similarly to our last conversation here, and it was actually pretty hilarious. It was one of those things where, it did get out of control. The next day, there was the New York Post. It had my picture and it said "dead drunk." It was just like one of those things. Jay called me at home the next day. You okay, man? You really kind of went. But then then that was sort of the beginning of me realizing, you can't.
Why Tom Green went on Leno and deliberately got drunk.
Yeah, and in hindsight, I go, well, that was kind of the outrageous kind of young version of me that I was doing on the show that made perfect sense to do that for a gag. But then, the naive kid in me didn't understand, well, a lot of people in Hollywood did not understand that and then got mad. And the movie studio.
People got mad at you?
Well, like the movie studio, I was on promoting a movie and they were like, oh, we don't want you to go any more talk shows for the movie. I'm like, what? It was a joke. It was a joke. And they're not interpreting it as a joke. They're interpreting it as me being kind of out of control. Which, yeah, exactly. But it was a manufactured out of control. I was out of control, but it was planned. It was planned confusion, right? So, but that kind of subtlety didn't really kind of pass the smell test. So then you start to go, oh, geez, I better tone it down a little bit. Better tone it down a little bit because this, and you sort of end up falling into that feeling where all of a sudden you're, like you said, going to an audition or driving out to a meeting and.
Or just being a person that you're not.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if you're hosting a late night talk show and all of a sudden you're this sort of wearing a tie, this odd button down.
And trying to make something that they like and fit into their mold and, try to get your own little creative shots off within that mold. But no longer are you actually being purely yourself, right?
Right. And you can't. It's not even possible.
Then, you end up living there for 20 years, and it becomes normal pretty quickly, right? And then you sort of slowly forget, this is just the way it works, I guess, now. And then eventually, one day you go, I'm getting out of here. And I got to say, when you moved here, it was a bit of a light bulb, I think, for me too. It was inspiring for me because I sort of realized, oh, look at that, Joe's leaving. Because you were always at the Comedy Store, all the clubs. It was a scene in L.A., and you're thinking, wow, like Joe's just going to go do it on his own and just turn his back on this whole infrastructure here. And I was like, yeah, you can do that. You don't have to be here. And it was really inspiring, and it inspired a lot of people.